Good morning, Your Holiness. We are deeply honored and grateful to you for gracing this first international Emory Tibet Symposium of Scholars and Scientists, bridging Buddhism and science for mutual enrichment with your presence. Emory Tibet Science Symposium is the fruition of your long-standing vision for a genuine collaboration between scientists and Buddhist monastic scholars, a vision to bridge Buddhism and modern science for mutual enrichment. It also marks a major milestone in the Emory Tibet Science Initiative, a program developed to realize your vision for a comprehensive and sustainable science curriculum, especially for the Tibetan monastic. We would like to welcome His Holiness Ganden Thi Rinpoche, His Eminence Ganden Tiso Rinpoche, His Eminence Gyaltsen Shuji Rinpoche, Venerable Abbots and former Abbots, distinguished members of Central Tibetan Administration, distinguished speakers, venerable members of the Sangha, and other guests to this historic gathering. This occasion auspiciously coincides with the 600th anniversary of the founding of Drepung Monastic University, a most prestigious center of Buddhist scholarship that, along with Sera and Ganden Monastic Universities, has pioneered the inclusion of science education in the monastic curriculum. This symposium is the natural outgrowth of the work of Robert A. Paul Emory Tibet Science Initiative. This initiative was founded as a result of His Holiness inviting Emory University to collaborate with the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives to develop a comprehensive and multidisciplinary science education curriculum specifically aimed for Tibetan monastic students. For all of us at Emory University and the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, it is very gratifying to see the fruition of His Holiness's vision in the form of Emory Tibet Science Initiative and today in this historic symposium. We offer our deepest thanks to Your Holiness for your steadfast guidance and support in these groundbreaking endeavors. The Emory Tibet Science Initiative and an international partnership between Emory University and the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives, it is made possible by the generous support of the Dalai Lama Trust, Emory University, Johnny Winston Fund, the Lawson Foundation, Judith McMinn Foundation, Libby Cates and Hugh Kelly, Jen Kushner, and other anonymous donors. I would also like to acknowledge the kind generosity and efforts of many organizations and individuals. This begins with two co-sponsors, the Dalai Lama Trust and Emory University, along with the outstanding collaborators, Drepung Monastic University, the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. Drepung Loseling Monastery has graciously provided this august conference venue, as well as the hospitality and housing for speakers and other guests. Additionally, Drepung Loseling assumed a lion's share of responsibility for coordinating this symposium. Before I describe the format of the event of this three-day conference, I would first request His Eminence Ganden Thi Rinpoche, the 103rd throne holder of the great Tsongkhapa, the founder of Gelug lineage, to address the assembly, followed by a brief video message from Emory University conveyed by Dr. Gary Hawk, the Vice President and the Deputy to the President of Emory University.
The great unsolicited friend of all beings, including humans and gods, Nobel Peace Laureate, the crown ornament of samsara and nirvana, the savior of humans and gods, the supreme protector, the Lord of lords, all-knowing and vast wisdom, to you I humbly pay my utmost respect by bowing down my body, speech, and mind in making limitless prostrations. With uncompromised trust, utmost admiration, and unfathomed delight, while tossing flowers of auspiciousness, I welcome you to the Emory Tibet Symposium. bridging science and Buddhism for mutual enrichment. Despite being fully immersed and engaged in the well-being of sentient beings and the flourishing of Dharma, never granting oneself any respite from it, you still care to bless us with your presence, for which we are all immensely grateful. I also welcome all the solicited participants and invited guests to the symposium and pray to the Triple Gems for the success of the symposium and fulfillment of your benevolent expectations in braving difficulties and hardship to participate in this conference. Today's symposium of this nature and significance, in a way, marks the fruition of His Holiness the Dalai Lama's long-sustained efforts and hope. With great confidence and great openness, and of course with benevolent hopes, His Holiness has personally engaged with scientists from different disciplines over the past several decades. As a result of those conversations and dialogues, a new discipline in science called contemplative science has emerged on the scientific forum. A new attention has been drawn on the possible ways of incorporating the so far overlooked first personal account into the research findings of pertinent areas, and the world is heading towards the growing consensus towards that. A new wave of interest has been aroused worldwide in exploring the benefits of compassion and kindness in neuroscience and psychology. All these signify a major positive shift in the very way science is done and conceived. On the other hand, for the Buddhist scholars and students, these dialogues and initiatives have benefited them with the additional knowledge of scientific method, a deeper appreciation of quantum world, as well as the details of human anatomy and physiology, among others. From my own personal experience, as early as 1959, the Chinese Communist regime has begun denouncing Tibetan Buddhism as blind faith and backward, and made baseless criticisms to its basic doctrines. So for those who have obtained faith in the teachings of the Buddha through understanding, and who aspires to pass on this gift of Buddha's teachings, a genuine source of happiness and well-being, to the future generations, I feel it is imperative that to equip themselves with both traditional and modern education and proceed with time by coming up with innovative means to preserve, promote, and serve the Dharma. In this regard, I see the introduction of science education very appropriate and timely. I take this opportunity in thanking everyone, both individuals and organizations, who have been either directly or indirectly involved in the different projects of bringing science education to the monastics. I request you to continue to extend your support in the future and invite you to be generous and open in your guidance and directions going forward. To the monastic students who have enrolled in these programs, I urge you to first obtain a well-informed understanding of the Buddhist teachings and live them in your day-to-day life, thus becoming a genuine 21st century Buddhist. Then on that foundation, bearing in mind its benefit and significance to the Dharma as well as to the well-being of the general masses, pursue the modern science studies with as much vigor and dedication. This will bring glory to the Dharma as well as sustain the blessings of it for the masses for a long time to come. Finally, I offer the following earnest request and sincere prayers to His Holiness Dalai Lama. Although in definitive sense your Vajra body, speech and mind are beyond the reach of any obstacles and hindrances, however, for the sake of us ordinary beings, we urge you to kindly remain in our midst for long and good health, and continue to turn the wheel of Dharma of all three vehicles in accordance with our dispositions. Please take us under your wing until we reach full enlightenment, while in the meanwhile, please keep showering down upon us the unceasing rain of guidance and direction. We offer the earnest and fervent prayer to you from the depth of our hearts.
Respected brothers and sisters, I am very, very happy, indeed great honor, come to participate here. Timing this famous Daegu monastery since established now 600 years. So originally, since second Dalai Lama, of course, first Dalai Lama established Trishulpa monastery. Then second Dalai Lama, a great sort of spiritual master and great scholar. Eventually, he come to Daegu monastery, and he become abbot of Daegu monastery. So since then, till fifth Dalai Lama actually belongs to this monastery, Daegu monastery. But of course, so many people respect him, particularly the second Dalai Lama, very much non-sectarian figure. And then fifth Dalai Lama, then, you see, because of particular circumstances, then, you see, he also, you see, carry the political responsibility. Then, the Dalai Lama's headquarters, something like headquarters, shifted to Potala, like that. So this is something special connection with Dalai Lamas, these several generations. Then this meeting, the nature of our meeting, Buddhism and science. And when we start this kind of meeting organized by Mind Life or institution. So I suggested Buddhism means, I think, a certain sort of a way of training to achieve nirvana or salvation and Buddhahood. So that's, I think, too vast. And also, you see, in the last more than 30 years, I have sort of serious discussion with modern scientists. We never discuss about next life or about nirvana or possibility to achieve Buddhahood or these things. We simply discuss about the reality at present sort of level. So, more precise, I usually describe Buddhist science and modern science. So in any way, I feel modern science so far mainly focusing on the subject of matter, external thing. Science not yet much pay attention about our inner world, our mind, our the emotions, these things. Yet, now today's world, there are a lot of problems because of destructive emotion. And individually also because of, say, too much sort of destructive emotion, very strong. The person himself or herself also a lot of sort of destructive sort of emotion, and eventually health also ruined. So therefore, now I think modern science, I think, should include about inner world, inner science, in order to create happy individual, happy family, happy society, finally happy humanity. Buddhism, one particular sort of spiritual tradition, it cannot cover entire 7 billion human beings. But science is, it can cover 7 billion human beings. So through sort of scientific way, to build a healthy mind, healthy physical, through that way, I think science can make significant contribution for a better world. I usually call this 21st century should be a century of peace. And in order to achieve century of peace, the problem always there. Sort of source of conflict always there. Then, in spite of that, how to build peace century. Then, we must develop, I think, meaningful spirit of dialogue whenever we met some differences, different views, different interests, through as a meaningful dialogue. In order to create meaningful dialogue, we must have this sort of concept of respect other side. They're also part of humanity, our brothers, sisters. So their interest also part of the world's interest for world, humanity. So we must respect. Then this is some kind of compromise with a reconciliation sort of attitude. So that's the way to build this century as a century of dialogue. So now science should pay more attention about these sort of inner value. In that respect, Buddhist science, so there are, I think, useful information about our emotion, about our mind. And also, with fuller knowledge about this inner world or whole system of our emotion, then much easier to tackle these destructive emotion. Not as a part of Buddhism, but simply academic subject. Now, since here many monk scholars and monk students, I speak Tibetan. Okay. So now translation there. So nothing secret. Yeah, that's really.
So today, this special place and at special time, today we again had this opportunity to discuss with science, especially organized by Emory University. There's the history of, I would like to say a brief history of this kind of program. Generally, when we talk about Buddhism, and the Buddha teaches, first round of teaching, he talks about Four Noble Truths, and he talks about what is the truth. And in Buddhism, it's not praying the Buddha. It's not like praying the Buddha and Buddha giving something to you. And Buddha, in fact, said that he won't be able to. He won't be able to transfer his powers to the students, and he won't be able to take away the negative karma of his students. He can only talk about the truth. So when we talk about truth, it's not only talking about the ultimate truth, but also about at the conversational level. And we can talk about the causal relations and how things exist, and then you can go deeper into and then we can talk about the cessations and the path to enlightenment. And from that onwards, then we talk. It belongs to the realm of Buddhism as a religion. But basically, we talk about when we talk about the fundamental nature. And based on the reality or the truth, then based on that, then it talks about training our mind. So in order to do that, it's important to know the truth, all the nature of the reality. And at first of the Four Noble Truths, we talk about this truth of suffering. And here we have this two parts. We can talk about the living beings and the physical world. And in our tradition, there are a lot of information about the physical world. But many of the information that is mentioned in Abhidharma and the things that is described in Kala Chakra, if we take them literally, then there are even like information that is contradicted with the empirical evidence. So, and we believe that if our tradition is something that is based on logic, then there's no room for believing something that contradicts empirical evidence. When we talk about the physical world, we talk about 4 or 5 elements if we include space. We talk about the emergence of the physical world. And in some traditions in Buddhism, we talk about what called space particle. And this space particle is smaller than the atom, and it could be thought as far deeper. It could be more like a wave by nature. So, and based on this space particle, from then onward, then the emergence of a grosser level of physical materials like element of wind, the element of earth, the element of fire emerges. And these topics are related with cosmology, and we can think more about these topics, and these are related with the formation of the physical universe. And basically, we talk about different eons, the cessation of the previous universe eon, and then the emergence of a new universe or a new eon, and this we can, and then in science we talk about this history of the universe. Even though they don't have a clear understanding about how the Big Bang began, there has to have a cause. If from the Buddhist logical point of view, it cannot be created by a creator God. It cannot be happened without causes. but we don't have clear understanding in science. But still, there are a lot of very detailed information related with the emergence of universe in science. So it's important to learn cosmology in science by the Buddhist monks. And then in Buddhism, we pay more focus on the living beings. And then it's related with the subject of biology, especially in Tantra tradition. We talk about the physical body, the wind channels, and the consciousness that operates through these wind channels. And then we talk about the different levels of the consciousness. So not only about the consciousness that is associated with five senses, and a little bit, if you go to a little bit subtle level, then we talk about this sleeping state. And if you go deeper, then in science they talk about these deep sleeping states. And then if go deeper, and Buddhist, we can talk about this when you have these unconscious states. And also in Buddhist tradition, the subtlest, most kind of states you can have during the process of the death. And so in Buddhist tradition, during after the death, or after the process of the death, even after the heart beating stops, and almost when there's no brain activities, the body can remain for a long time. That is something that's happening. That is a fact. So how this thing this nature can happen? We have to do analysis, the experiment. We have some scientists here. These days in Tibetan it's called Tugdam. After somebody died, the body will remain fresh for a very long period of time, and that's state we call as Tugdam. So recently there are even recently there are some people who stay in this state, and so now what kind of the mental state or state of consciousness in these situations we have to experiment. We have to understand. We have to try to understand, and then we can talk about why that situation can happen, and what are the causes of that kind of situation. So when we talk about the cause, we have to have a cause that is co-committed, or that can, for example, for our physical body, the substantial cause, we cannot have the first substantial cause. Even during the Big Bang, the substantial cause of my body is there even during the Big Bang. So we cannot have, we won't be able to find the first source. The same way, even for the consciousness, we cannot have a substantial cause, beginning of a substantial cause. So whatever in Buddhism, there's a tradition of establishing the truth, and here there's the physical truth about the physical world, and if for that matter there's a more detailed descriptions in science. In our tradition, most of the information are related with whatever the common concept that is available in that time of the time. Now in science, ultimately, when they talk about the physical world in quantum physics, that when they try to find the small particle, they come to a point where they were not able to find identity where they can pinpoint as the satellite. So even in Buddhist traditions, so especially the minority schools, when they try to negate the concept of existence of a physical reality outside there, the logics they use are very similar to the observations they made in modern physics. At present in quantum physics, people, the non-existence of the physical matter is almost they can understand, but they may not much have understanding about the non-existence of the consciousness that operates on the physical phenomena. And in Buddhism, we talk about in Indian Buddhist scholars, mostly they use the meditative thought process or the thought experiments. In science, mostly they use scientific equipments and do the experiments. So there are some commonalities, and one can benefit from another. So even for the scientists, for the past 30 years since, and we are having these kind of interactions, and especially the concept of mind or the consciousness that is came from the Nalanda tradition is kind of a new subject for them, and because of that, many of them are interested in understanding this. So when we talk about the Buddhism, then we have to talk about the Pali tradition. The Pali tradition is the kind of a foundational Buddhism, and most of his thoughts were teachings were taught in Pali tradition, especially the Vinayana tradition. Even though there are some minor differences, otherwise the Vinayana course of conducts, they are like the 200, around 200 course of conducts are almost similar in traditions, but there are some differences between the Pali and the Sanskrit traditions that we have. For example, when we talk about the robes, the punishments for not having proper conduct are a little bit different. So in the differences mostly come in the subject of metaphysics, especially the concept of the no concept is in and generally the Buddhism in general, and especially the tradition that came from the Nalanda University, they pay a lot of emphasis on logic, and because of that, the quotation of the Buddha where they said, don't follow me because it's said by me, but you have to examine by yourself. So this quotation is very important in the text of Entering the Middle Way. And there are some special sutras and in these texts they said that logic and empirical evidence is more important even than the quotation of the Buddha himself. Even if there's a quotation in the text that is said by Buddha himself, but if it contradicts the logic, then logic should have pay more. But then there are other parts where we have to take the little meanings of the Buddha's teaching himself. So even the teaching of the Buddha himself, we can have two parts. One where we can take the little meaning, and other we cannot take the little meaning. And we talk about, we respect other traditions. They all talk about compassion, and when we talk about the love and compassion, then most of the world religions, they have similar concepts. But when we talk about the view, we can have different views. For example, the Jainism and the Buddhism, we don't believe in a creator God. And in Buddhism, I'm not sure if in Pali tradition they categorize Buddha's teaching into the interpretive or the definitive teachings. So in Buddhism in general, and especially the Nalanda tradition, and is based on reasoning, and you can use reasoning and logic to think about, and following this tradition we can have similar discussions with science and gain from their knowledge. When doing the scientists, the one thing that we lost is the concept of Mount Meru, because I don't believe in Mount Meru anymore. So since Dalai Lama don't believe in the concept of Mount Meru, please don't call me a nihilist. So I don't think there's a contradictory when Buddha taught about the Four Noble Truths. And when we talk about the concepts related with this, at that time, he taught about different kinds of models, different models of the world. So it may be the concept is common or the prevalent among that time. So when we talk about the physical world, even though the concept is about the physical world, there are different models. For example, there's a different description in Kala Chakra, and there's a different a concept in Sutra. So even though this came from the Buddha himself, so normally, like they should not have a contradictory between the first and the second text, but it is there. So I said that a long time back, when Buddha came to this earth, he came here to talk about the law of permanent and the Four Noble Truths, and not to talk about this, not to make measurements on this earth. So
quantum physics
in quantum physics, when in our tradition, in science, the nature of the physical world, they talk about almost like the impermanent nature of the physical. But when they talk about the impermanent nature of the consciousness, is not bit clear. So we can complement each other in these traditions and can have measurable benefit from each other.
So the main purpose of this kind of meeting, number one, enrich both sides, Buddhist science and modern science. The second purpose, when we sort of pay more attention about our inner peace, then in order to propagate within India, we use the word secular ethics. But international level, we use the word universal value. The secular in the West, you see, because of French Revolution and the Bolshevik Revolution, sometimes secular means a little bit against religion, isn't it?
Yes.
Even some, you see, told me the atheism and the secularism is some connection. So atheism means anti-God. So certainly, according to Indian understanding, secular means respect all religions and also respect the non-believer. I think that concept is very relevant to today's world. Today, out of 7 billion, over 1 billion non-believer. These also human brothers, sisters. See, they also, you see, need some sort of understanding about the ultimate source of our inner peace. So, see, if we approach these people in order to promote the inner peace, explain according to religion, they never sort of showing interest. So we must show or approach including non-believer, entire humanity on scientific basis sort of approach. Now scientists say, more inner peace, better health. Sometimes maybe too much. I also sometimes say, I'm one example. Because of inner peace, my face looks quite young. So in any way, I think many people, even you see some scientists, you see, sort of experiment or investigate people who practice seriously about compassion, about karuna or compassion. You see, their brain, something little different. And their mind more stable. So this is now already some scientific sort of research shows like that. So not talking about next life, not talking about heaven or hell or nirvana. So therefore, in order to approach 7 billion human beings, we need inner peace. Ultimate basis of inner peace is more warm-heartedness. Now that, I think, on the basis of a scientific sort of finding, then we can approach to, I think, those non-believers. And also among the believer, obviously now, the faith, all different faith, all carry the message of love, message of forgiveness, message of tolerance. Yet, the faith itself causing conflict. So this clearly shows the lack of conviction about these inner value. Through education, people who really have the conviction. Now, ultimate source of inner peace is compassion, or kindness. If you see that kind of conviction through education there, then all major religious traditions are really helping immensely to further increase this practice. Without that conviction, then religion sometimes is used for destructive negative emotion, or used by anger, then causing more sort of trouble. It's unthinkable. The religious faith itself now dividing humanity and create more hatred and finally more violence. Unthinkable. That kind of a world, if we remain indifferent, is immoral. We have to think. We have to make effort. Our effort will not produce result next year or next decade, but we must start some serious work. Then my generation, including you, when our generation gone, then the younger generation, usually I describe generation of 21st century, then certainly our present sort of generation, if we make some sort of, also they show some path, genuine sort of, also the cooperation with modern science and ancient Indian knowledge about mind or science of mind, then I think it is our responsibility to show. Then the generation of 21st century, I think eventually may follow. If they really sort of implement or showing interest, enthusiasm, and determination, then end of this century, this 21st century, end of 21st century, could be more peaceful, more compassionate world. So we are not talking about heaven or say nirvana. We simply, you see, talking how build some kind of sort of heavenly world, or some kind of some semi-nirvana. Right? That kind of a world. That's our common responsibility, whether believer or non-believer, and believe in this or that. And then, of course, I am Buddhist. I'm a religious person. In my daily sort of life, early 3 o'clock morning, I start my prayer, my meditation, mainly analytical meditation. I do pray. Now, frankly speaking, for my own sort of peace of mind, this prayer is good. Pray to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, very good. But I think for world peace, I don't think, not much effect. Pray to Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, pray to God, pray to Allah, I don't think. I think 2,000 years, I think different part of the world, you see people pray. But seems the world, more trouble. So that conclusion is, logically, who created this trouble? We human beings, not other animal, not Buddha, or not Jesus Christ, or not sort of the Muhammad. We created. So logically, we have the responsibility to reduce this problem, to create better world, happier world. Through prayer, now I think, frankly speaking, failed to bring that kind of world. So now time comes, we should take full responsibility. For that, we should have vision and enthusiasm, self-confidence. So that is one purpose of our meeting. like that. That's all. Okay. That German, that was just cooler now, cooler. Okay. Okay, Tisha. So, that's all. Our discussion. Any Kawana was a chair. Another debate. Zero,
Don't.
not formality.
This is not.
I really, frankly speaking, formality is one of the obstacle or barrier. Come closer, completely informal way. I think my logic is when we born, no formality. When we die, no formality. These two things, most important part. And during the lifetime, too much formality. Too much smile. Artificial smile. Not good. Since you are just directly based, and of course, since many years, you see, we become very close friends. So I admire you. I really love you. I respect you. So the smile also. I often visit Japan. So I'm mentioning the Japanese. Oh, please, showing some smile. Usually they do not smile. Isn't it? Too much formality.
Yes.
That's not good. So I often use it telling my Japanese friend, oh, please give me smile. And then if the person, even I show smile, not a response, then sometimes I do what call.
Oh, you poke them?
Kasa. Tickle. then they smile.
It's possible not to smile.
Good.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for setting the vision for this conference. So the formal sessions, as we begin, there are 6 sessions. The sessions are arranged with 2 speakers for each session and the 2 panelists. Speakers will give their speech for 20 minutes each, and the panelists will make the initial response. And then, as Your Holiness suggested, we have arranged these sessions to be very open discussions, so that all the speakers and the panelists will take part in the discussions. The first session is, of course, to set the context for this conference, and the following 4 cover the 4 disciplines the Emory Tibet Science Initiative covers, that is the philosophy of science, physics, biology, and the neuroscience. And the 6th and final session will be about the application arising from this kind of dialogues, and that is the education of the heart, with what His Holiness also refers to the secular ethics in education. Before we invite the first speaker to present, we have 2 brief video presentations. First one, a message from Emory University by Dr. Gary Hawk. And the second one is a presentation by Dr. Robert A. Paul, who is the co-founder of Emory Tibet Partnership. He has presented his presentation by video. He was going to come, but because of health reasons, he could not be here. So we will present that through the video. First, please have the Robert A. Paul's, Gary Hawks, yes.
To all of greetings from Emory University to all of you as you gather for the Emory Tibet Symposium on Bridging Buddhism and Science for Mutual Enrichment. On behalf of the students, faculty members, and employees of Emory University, I extend an especially warm greeting to His Holiness, whom we know as our Presidential Distinguished Professor. You have been our teacher about Tibetan culture, our guide into Buddhist knowledge, and our advocate for developing an ethic of compassion. May this auspicious day bring you great health and deep happiness. Emory also extends hearty congratulations to the monastic community on this milestone achievement in the Emory Tibet Science Initiative. We are delighted that the symposium is being held at Drepung Loseling Monastery, the original partner in the Emory Tibet partnership that is now nearly 2 decades old. Although our 2 educational institutions have grown out of different religious traditions, we are united by a common purpose to reduce the suffering of the world. In 1998, His Holiness came to Emory to receive an honorary doctoral degree and to address the students who were graduating from the university that year. In his remarks that day, he said, "I believe that education is like an instrument. Whether that instrument is used properly or constructively depends on the user. We have education on the one hand. On the other hand, we have a good person with a good heart, a sense of caring for the welfare of others, a sense of commitment, a sense of responsibility. That is one of my fundamental beliefs," he said, "that a good heart, a warm heart, a compassionate heart is still teachable." Emory University shares this philosophy. Emory was founded nearly 200 years ago by Christians, and like good Buddhists, they believed that good actions, virtuous thoughts, and knowledge of the truth would bring great benefits to individuals and to society. The founders of Emory intended to educate not only the mind, but also the heart, both of them together, toward the goal of making the world a better place. Those founders of Emory might be surprised to find that the little school they built has grown into one of the major research universities in the United States. They would also be surprised to learn that Emory has been working to nurture a shared understanding between Buddhism and Western science. Yet Emory has many examples of scholars who have brought together deep religious faith and scientific truth for the benefit of others. One of Emory's early presidents, Alexander Means, became a clergyman, but he was not content to serve humanity by ministering only to spiritual needs. He traveled more than 650 kilometers across difficult mountains and untamed wilderness to one of the oldest universities in America to study medicine. For the rest of his life, he was both a man of strong spiritual faith and one of the leading scientists in the southern part of the United States. So there is precedent for the intellectual adventure we have undertaken together through the Emory Tibet Science Initiative. To those of you gathered for this symposium, I offer thanks from Emory for your willingness to explore this path. Thank you for your curiosity, your perseverance in the face of difficult concepts and challenging circumstances. Thank you for your creativity in asking questions that open new insights for your teachers as well as for yourselves. May your time together be spiritually nourishing and intellectually stimulating. Tashi Dalek.
And now, Your Holiness, Dr. Robert A. Paul's presentation via video.
Good morning. I am Robert Paul, a professor at Emory University and formerly Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences there. With the support of the university and the collaboration of many colleagues at Emory and in India, and the blessing of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, I helped initiate the Emory-Tibet Partnership, of which the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative is one component part. On behalf of Emory University and the Emory-Tibet Partnership, it is indeed an honor to address you on this auspicious occasion, the recognition of the Emory-Tibet Science Initiative and the celebration of the 600th anniversary of the founding of Drepung Monastery. I want to offer my greetings and respects, first of all, to His Holiness, whose wisdom and generosity have guided this endeavor, among many others, that aim to bring together the achievements of Western science with the unique and precious heritage of the great tradition of Tibetan Buddhist thought and practice. I also offer special thanks and appreciation for those in attendance here, Tibetan and American alike, who have made the Emory Tibet Science Project the successful enterprise that it has become. The monastic pupils who have studied science at Emory and in India, and the Emory faculty members who have enthusiastically taught them, are creating an important new synthesis of knowledge. I also send my greetings and welcome to the many scholars who have come from around the world to address this conference, and to all those in the audience, either in person or by electronic means, to witness and participate in this historic occasion. I regret that I cannot be at Drepung in person, but I'm happy to participate via video. The theme of my remarks today is that of the axial age, and whether our present historical moment might be understood as a reigniting of the flame of creativity that characterized the first axial age. I follow a number of important contemporary thinkers, such as the great scholar of comparative religion, Karen Armstrong, who have offered the hope that we may indeed be living in a time that is ripe for a new axial age, or perhaps a reawakening of the first one. The term axial age, coined by the philosopher Karl Jaspers in 1949, refers to that remarkable moment in world history in the middle of the first millennium before the Common Era, that is, around the year 500 BCE, when many of the greatest philosophers and religious teachers flourished simultaneously, apparently without knowing at the time of each other's existence. This was the time when Gautama Buddha first turned the wheel of the law, when Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle philosophized in Greece, Confucius and Mencius made their great contributions to Chinese thought, and the prophets of ancient Israel compiled what is now the Hebrew Bible. It is within the arenas of subsequent thought established by these titanic seminal figures that the vast majority of people on earth continue to live to this day. In this sense, that axial age has set the intellectual, religious, and ethical agenda for much of the world for the past 2,500 years. While the geographical areas within which each tradition originated appear to us to have been widely disparate, in fact, they belong to a great international community on the Eurasian continent, joined not only by war, but also by flourishing trade and the movement of goods and of people and ideas along routes crisscrossing the areas radiating out from ancient Mesopotamia, one of the great cradles of urbanization and what we call civilization, from the eastern Mediterranean in the west to India and China in the east. Just at that time, too, another larger-than-life historical figure arose, Cyrus II, known as Cyrus the Great, not only for his conquests, but also for his generosity, tolerance, and greatness of spirit. He created the first Persian Empire, the greatest geopolitical state that had yet been seen on Earth. On its western edge were the Greek city-states, including those in Anatolia, now Turkey, in which the first stirrings of Greek philosophy arose, while on its eastern border was the Indus Valley. The vast expanse between these two regions was now unified into a single polity. Though we have frustratingly few historical records from that period in Iranian history, we can surmise that this development solidified connections among far-flung peoples that already existed at that time as trade routes, particularly between Greece and India, with Persia playing the role of mediator and culture broker between them. This Persian Empire, which lasted a couple of centuries, was followed by the equally extensive Hellenistic Empire of Alexander the Great, during which a great Greco-Buddhist culture flourished in Gandhara, where the two cultures, Greek and Indian, actually met and left a heritage of great artistic achievements. Later, the Roman, Arab, and Central Asian empires, in successive waves, continued to unite this entire area. The famous Silk Road became the main highway along which east-west contact flowed. Great centers of culture, art, and learning sprang up in Central Asia, which served as the vital link between the eastern part of Europe and the South Asian subcontinent. From our limited vantage of the West, this unified state of the Eurasian world seems to have crumbled with the fall of Rome in the 5th century CE, which was followed by what are called the Dark Ages. But we tend to neglect the fact that Rome and its empire had by that time long split into two halves, and the eastern half continued to flourish for another 1,000 years as the Byzantine Empire, which had Europe on its western flank and the various peoples of the Middle East and Central Asia to its east. When it fell to the Turks in 1452, the conquering Ottomans continued to play the role of intermediary between the world of Iran and India farther east and the eastern part of Europe. The Renaissance in Europe, in no small part, owed some of its success to the effects of the trade and cultural influence that flowed in between wars between the Ottomans and the Venetian and Genoese maritime city-states of Italy. That tolerant spirit did not, however, fare equally well in Western Europe, where Christianity, having been adopted as the official religion of the Roman Empire under the Emperor Constantine, became the only accepted faith. Jews were subjected to persecution in their European settlements, while crusades were launched in a continuous series of confrontations with the Islamic world. But it was this world that asserted itself to become the dominating force of Eurasia and indeed of world history following the end of the reign of the last great Central Asian conqueror, Tamerlane. The European sea voyages of exploration and colonization that began in the 15th century, spurred by competition for mercantile success and the pursuit of riches, enabled the nations of the far western edge of the Eurasian continent, Portugal, Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands, to emerge as the major world powers. From their locations on the Atlantic, they could sail around Africa to India. So the great cities and institutions of Inner Asia were bypassed and languished. It was then that the impression arose that the West and the East were two entirely separate worlds that had never met and would never meet. In the meanwhile, the two cultural traditions that had been separated by the fall of the Central Asian bridge between them went off in different intellectual directions. In Asia, including in Buddhist Asia, the original spirit of amalgamation of religion, philosophy, and technology remained in place. But during the age of exploration and the concomitant period called the Enlightenment in Europe, thought focused more and more on technology and the science and mathematics that undergirded it, separating itself from its connections with religious or philosophical speculation and moving forward hand in hand with commercial and practical interests fueled by the vast enterprise of colonialism and imperialism. After the philosophical division of mind from body inaugurated by René Descartes in the 17th century, Western scientific pursuits limited themselves to the physical material world, with physics leading the way. The inner life was not considered to be amenable to study, and the question of ethics and the pursuit of happiness were left to the circumscribed realm of religion. At the same time, the great traditions of the East, of which Buddhism is one of the chief examples, concentrated on the exploration of the mind and the inner life in a context that included ethical, logical, and other philosophical strands, as well as overtly religious ones, but did not participate in the ferment of scientific creativity and technological invention and discovery that marked the last few centuries of world history. In our contemporary time, however, as the age of colonialism and sea travel has been supplanted not only by convenient air travel, but by the revolution in electronic communication, the stage is set for a possible reuniting of what had been sundered. Once again, we live in an interconnected community, now encompassing not just Eurasia, but the entire globe. The time seems ripe for the two traditions of Western science and its many marvelous achievements, and the equally great achievements of Asian thought, of which Tibetan Buddhism is a major and invaluable part, as the main heir of the work of ancient India and of Nalanda University, to once again find common ground. It is to the great credit of His Holiness the Dalai Lama but he has grasped the importance of this historical moment, so fraught with peril, unrest, and dissatisfaction among peoples around the world, as one in which the opportunity has arisen for a new synthesis of Western and Eastern traditions to encounter each other not as objects of mere curiosity, but as necessary complements to each other, from whose unification a previously unthought of possibility can arise. He has used his position as one of the most respected and influential religious leaders in the world to bring together, inspire, and enable a wide range of conversations, projects, research enterprises, and other meetings of minds that have captured the imagination of some of the most brilliant and original thinkers of our day from both West and East, who have begun to, in earnest, to immerse themselves, either from a monastic or scientific perspective, in the wisdom of their opposite numbers. Many representatives of that collective effort are here at Drepung today. I am pleased and honored to say that one such project has been the Emory-Tibet Partnership, in which scholars and students from Tibetan monastic communities in India and scientists and scholars from Emory and other universities in America have been actively engaged for over 20 years now in realizing some of His Holiness's vision. Already this effort has borne fruit. For example, the cognitively based compassion training program developed at Emory by my friend and colleague Geshe Lobsang Tenzin Negi and co-workers is a great success, now being widely taught. The integration of Western and Tibetan medicine through experiment and cross-fertilization has made significant advances, and now Emory-trained Tibetan scientists are teaching Western science to Tibetan monastics, while their Western scientist mentors are exploring Tibetan knowledge and practices and incorporating them into their own thinking and practice. We live in a time when the forces of nationalism, authoritarianism, and fanaticism threaten us all. It is a time when the certainties of old worldviews have fallen and little has been found to replace them. The universe that modern Western science has given us is one we understand well and can predict and control through mathematical models. But at the same time, it has left us living in an apparently cold and meaningless void, one in which the pursuit of human happiness and the pursuit of a meaningful life seem ever more elusive to more and more people. Even the certainties of science have fallen away as well. The laws of physics and of mathematics that were supposed to replace religion as a solid, rational, and empirical basis for certainty have given way to theories of the composition of matter and of the universe, such as quantum theory and relativity, that defy comprehension and can only suggest to us that our founding premises on which we've tried to erect a correct picture of reality are fundamentally flawed. The world now appears to us more compatible with the doctrines of impermanence, interdependency, and the lack of absolute essence that the Buddhists call emptiness than we Westerners had once thought. If humanity is to survive, flourish, and enable people to live meaningful and satisfied lives, the melding of the outer and inner knowledge in which the West and the East have specialized may perhaps indeed allow us to now begin to inaugurate a new, or perhaps a reborn old, axial age. Thank you.
And now I would like to invite Professor Michel Pitbull from the French National Center for Scientific Research, who will present on philosophy as a bridge between Buddhism and science.
Thank you very much. So it's an honor to present you another talk about philosophy and science. I thought that it was very important to say that philosophy is a crucial partner in this dialogue between Buddhism and science, also because philosophy can clarify what science is and also because it can help present Buddhism in a framework, in a cultural framework, which can be understood easily by Western people. So, first of all, a philosopher would ask for the motivations for the dialogue. So, from the Buddhist side, the main motivation is to add to the means we have to alleviate suffering. And of course, there are so many interesting means for alleviating suffering in science. Also, Buddhism has the interest to confront the view of modernity to see whether it's compatible with it or not. And also, it acquires a new element of knowledge about the world, which is very important in Buddhism. Knowledge is the mean also for liberation. In science, of course, there are little motivations and broad motivations. The little motivation for some scientists is to study the brain of some subjects who have stable mental states. So it can help to improve our knowledge of the functions of some parts of the brain or some dynamics of the brain. But other scientists are very lucid, and they know that there are blind spots, there are lacuna in scientific worldview, and they think that this blind spot can be compensated by knowledge of Buddhism. The main blind spot of the scientific worldview is certainly its neglect of the subject who sees the object. It's so concentrated onto the objects that it ignores that there is also behind a knower. Not really ignores, but at least neglects, says it's unimportant. So Francisco Varela, who was one of these very important and very clear-sighted scientists, said that discovering Buddhism would be a second renaissance in the cultural history of the West. In the same way as, the Renaissance was the discovery of texts from ancient Greece, and it completely opened up the whole field of ideas in the West. In the same way, understanding Buddhism would be a way to completely open up our way of understanding the world. So the dialogue is made possible because there are some similarities between Buddhism and science. The main similarity, you have said that before, is that both disciplines remain very faithful to empirical data, and they use reasoning to infer some sound conclusions from these empirical data. So this is a common point. But there are also differences, important differences that should not be forgotten. So one difference is that Buddhism really seeks cessation of sufferance by uprooting its existential root. Whereas science, I don't know what's going on with that, but okay. Science is trying to fight symptoms and physical causes of suffering. But it completely ignores the existential root of suffering, which is likely to be impermanence. It just, science cannot suppress time, cannot suppress impermanence, so there is still this source of suffering. Yes, should I? Yeah, maybe I go on. So the second difference between Buddhism and science is it's that the empirical data of Buddhism are essentially experience, lived experience. Whereas as you said, in science, it's experiments, instruments, and observation of the results of the outcomes of these instruments. Another very important difference is that in order to go to liberation in Buddhism, you have to suspend general concepts and not to project them onto what is experienced, and to stick to experienced particulars. Whereas in science, you seek mathematical universals and general concepts. And this is considered as the deepest knowledge in science. These differences, if they are ignored, they can create a bias in the dialogue. In some conferences I've attended of a dialogue between Buddhism and science, I've seen that scientists sometimes have a sort of low view of Buddhism. For instance, they see meditation as just an object for neuroscience. They see Buddhist contemplative life in a Western agenda of efficiency, namely, how does it work? What is the mechanism of meditation? And what is its use? How can it be used in order, for instance, to improve everyday life, to improve business, to improve many other things of this kind? So it's really a bias, I think. It has also the idea that, you know, science is very overvalued. Science is overvalued in the cultural framework of the West as true knowledge, revelation of intrinsic features of nature. And then these same scientists who think that say, okay, in this framework, Buddhism would be seen only as a sort of dispositif of neural fitness. So that's really the bias, and I think this bias can be corrected by understanding that Buddhism has also maybe a view of what science is. Because there is a Buddhist epistemology, a very powerful epistemology, and there is also this famous doctrine of the two truths, the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. And according to that, science would be classified as a part of the conventional truth, even though it's extraordinarily efficient, even though its practical outcome is remarkable, still it doesn't reach, you know, the deepest ultimate kind of truth because it only uses general concepts and universal laws. For instance, the Buddhist philosopher of Japan, Nishida Kitaro, said, according to his training of Zen Buddhism, he said, the world of science is not the world of the true reality. According to him, the true reality or the ultimate truth is not something that can be expressed by symbols, words, or general concepts. So, in that, you know, even in the West, there has been a question, what is science after all? What can it do? And there are three essential doctrines. The first one is that science is a picture of reality, a faithful picture of reality as it is independently of us. It's called scientific realism. Second view, another extreme view, is that science is only a projection of our mind. It's called idealism. And a third view is somehow intermediate. You could call that a middle way between the two of them, and I will talk of that later. But, you know, there are arguments in favor of scientific realism and arguments against it. Arguments against it was given, for instance, by Immanuel Kant, who said that, in fact, the idea that we have a picture of reality as it is independently of us is absurd. Why? Because in order to know the correspondence between our picture and the object, we have to know the object. But knowing the object is a representation of object. So representation of object is compared with representation of object, which is circular. The same for Popper, Karl Popper. A philosopher of science said, be careful because we can never verify scientific proposition. We just submit them to possible refutation. And therefore, we are never certain of them. He said, our science is not knowledge. It can never claim to have attained the truth. So be careful of that. But on the other hand, there is a very powerful argument in favor of scientific realism. It was given by Hilary Putnam. This argument is the famous miracle argument. It says, if science were not somehow a good picture of reality out there, it would not be so efficient. It would not have this success. And therefore, I think the challenge for the people who are not scientific realists is to understand how it can be so efficient, so successful, without being a picture of reality as it is independently of us. Okay, so maybe I go on then. You know, between these two extreme views, namely realism and idealism, as I told you, there is a middle way. It was proposed by Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, and also in a much more modern way by Francisco Varela. So, according to Kant, what we know is nothing like the intrinsic nature of reality out there independently of us. It's the relation we have with nature, which we call phenomena. Phenomena are appearances due to the interaction between us and nature. And between these phenomena, we establish relations that we call the laws of nature. Even objects, according to him, were just a network of relations between phenomena, which are relations of nature with us. So this knowledge is entirely relational, not absolute. And yet it's very efficient. I explained it later. Why? Maybe I can explain now, in fact, even though it's not in my slide. But it's because we pick out the most stable features of these phenomena, the most stable relations between phenomena, and also we pick out what can be shared between us. So we can, in fact, due to these procedures of selection of stable features of phenomena and features that can be shared between all subjects, we can reach a very good level of intersubjective work. And also we do proposals and corrections. And with this process of proposals and correction, we reach, oh, wonderful. Yes. It works, yes. Yes, so we reached this one. Varela was in fact, had a very similar position with respect to Kant. According to him, ordinary and scientific knowledge are not a mirror of nature, not a representation of nature outside independently of us, nor a projection of our mind, but an expression of the fruitful interplay between us and nature. So he entirely agreed with Kant on this point, and therefore he thought that knowledge can be seen as a process of dependent arising of the knower and the known, something like pratitya samutpada. Okay. A good example of that is quantum mechanics. Here is a theory which is amazingly efficient, and yet no one has completely agreed about what kind of picture it gives us of nature. Pictures of nature as given by quantum mechanics are usually thought of as paradoxical, and therefore people are there is a lot of disagreement between them about that. Yet, if you take that as Bohr prescribed as just a mathematical symbolism able to predict the values of observables, which are relations between our apparatuses and nature, then we have an amazingly powerful way to predict phenomena and to manipulate phenomena for technological ends. Even the objects of quantum mechanics, namely particles, are not thought of as things that exist in the absolute, out there independently of us. There are physicists who said beautifully that particles have the mode of existence of a rainbow. namely not a thing that can be catched, but a relation between drops of water, light of the sun, and us, observers. So you have here an example, a beautiful example of a conventional, practical way of knowledge, yet highly successful. So it's possible. It's possible that this kind of knowledge is at the same time conventional and very successful. Here I skip this one because it would be too long. I give you another example of the limits of science, I think, in certain questions. It's, you know, many people think that consciousness must have emerged at a certain point of biological evolution in certain living beings. And therefore, the question is, when did consciousness arise during the evolution of living beings? The problem also is that according to the definition you give of consciousness, you find completely different answers to that question of the time of appearance of consciousness in the evolution. If you think of consciousness as reflection of...
Are you cold?
No problem. Yes, I'm rather very hot because I'm speaking to you. Reflection. So if you think of consciousness as reflection about the unified self, then this is a very elaborate definition of consciousness, and most scientists think that this kind of consciousness only appeared with human beings. Another definition of consciousness is that it's a reflection about experienced events. For instance, reflection about pain or pleasure. In that case, many scientists think that mammals and birds can be conscious in this sense. Then you can have a much lower definition of consciousness, just concern, attraction towards food and repulsion towards threat. And according to Francisco Varela, from that point of view, even bacteria can be conscious because they have at least this attraction and repulsion. But now, what about pure experience? What about what you would call the luminous quality of consciousness, the mirror-like feature of consciousness? On this point, there is absolutely no clue in science to be expected. And the reason is easy to understand. Why? To sum up, it's because the engine of evolution is selection. Selection of the fittest organism. But what is selected is only behavior, efficient behavior in the environment. It cannot be the flavor for the organism of being in that environment. You can select features such as the unification of representations for efficient action. You can select features such as the reflectivity, but you cannot select a feature of the presence of experience. It's completely indifferent to evolution. It has no selective value whatsoever. So evolutive theory is not really concerned by pure experience. Therefore, my conclusion is that the theory of evolution doesn't exclude a thesis that is very dear, I think, to Buddhism. It doesn't exclude that the most basic level of consciousness, which is the luminous quality, the subtle consciousness, is beginningless. There is not necessarily a beginning to that. So my conclusion, my general conclusion will be the following. It's a conclusion for all monks and of course for you, Holiness. Don't be impressed by the global worldviews associated with science, such as naturalism, materialism, neurobiological reductionism, and so on. because I think they are essentially naive expressions of Western prejudice. Instead, follow what Einstein said, namely, heed what scientists do, not what they say about what they do. Heed, for instance, the fact that scientists are very careful about picking data, empirical data, and very careful about preparing their apparatus. So just see what they do, and what they do is being very careful about picking empirical data, and then be very careful about drawing conclusions from that. But don't pay too much attention to the general worldview that they use, because they are just guides for them. They are motivations. They are not much more than that. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much, Professor Pitbull. And now Dr. Carol Wortman will present.
Thank you.
Carol Wortman is one of the faculty leaders for Emory Tibet Science Initiative, and she will present Learning from Difference, Dialogues of Buddhism and Science in the Emory Tibet Science Initiative.
The purpose of this presentation is to build on what Professor Pitbull has said in terms of how we might bridge between Buddhism and science. Bring you up to date on how the ETSI has started doing that, and to share some of the insights that we have gained in the process. So we've already mentioned that we are inspired by your vision, Your Holiness, for a comprehensive and sustainable science education program for Tibetan monastic institutions. This is our goal. And in that process, we started out teaching the subjects of physics, biology, and neuroscience, but then we quickly learned that mathematics is underlying all of these disciplines, and moreover, as we've already heard from Professor Pitbull, that philosophy is involved in all of this, because both Buddhism and science have deep philosophical traditions that we need to engage. So this process has been in 3 stages so far, starting with planning in 2006-07, going into development. That was the pilot phase in which many of the monastics who are sitting here now participated. And now starting implementation in 2014. We just completed in summer the 3rd year of the program. So for this enterprise, we've developed a variety of materials for teaching and learning. This includes primers and textbooks, like the one I'm showing you here, online lectures that anyone can watch, and activities that can engage students with the basic principles and insights that can be gained through science. So one of the things that is absolutely central to this whole project is translation. Superficially, it would seem that this is because Tibetan and English is the dominant language for science, obviously are different languages, and Tibetan did not have a lexicon in science. But on another level, as I'll discuss, this requires us to engage in deep conversation about the concepts, the actual terms, in fields such as physics. So when we try to define what a particle is and translate that into Tibetan, it requires real clarity about what we're talking about. In order to make the program sustainable, we also are engaged in educating monks in teaching science. And so as you've already heard from Dr. Hauk, we've had 2 cohorts of monks who have studied science at Emory University, and a 3rd one that they're now. And these monks are returning to their monasteries and becoming science leaders, teaching science in year-round classes along with lay teachers, so that there is a full integration of science education in the monastic curriculum. This is just showing you in our summer intensives the numbers of students. Each year a new cohort is entered. So in 2014, that's the first cohort at each of the 3 participating sites, Drepung, Sera, Gaden. Then numbers go up every year as new cohorts enter. And also each summer as we enter new cohorts, more and more faculty are coming to teach at the monasteries. So that gives you a general idea of the program and what we have done so far. But in the rest of the talk, I'd like to address 3 areas where we've found real grounds for intellectual exchange. One involving knowledge and ontology, or worldview. Another involving modes of inquiry, how each goes about discovering. And third, transmission and learning. So first, in terms of knowledge, you would think, well, okay, if we're having an education program, then this is about the transmission of knowledge, say, from physics. This is one of our physics textbooks. And of course, there's a vast literature in science, as there is a vast literature in Tibetan Buddhism. So there is plenty of grounds for knowledge exchange there. But this knowledge is really just a reflection of the underlying concepts and philosophies that each tradition is pursuing. So, for example, in each of the talks over the next days, we'll be looking at these issues. So, as has already been mentioned, for physics, matter is a big concern. What is it, or what is it not? Similarly, for biology, a core concept is life, and a big question is, how does life come from non-life? That could be in 2 dimensions. One is, what are the origins of life? How did it appear? Another is, how does new life come? How does reproduction happen? And our speakers will talk about that. And we've already heard about the complexities for defining a concept like consciousness or sentience. For neuroscience, a big question is, where does it come from? What does it represent? And then, of course, for philosophy, a core concept is knowledge. What is it? How can we really know? So these core concepts are something that we will be working on then over our coming years. I want to use an illustration. Is that okay? Shall I use it? So as illustration, we're going to show you a movie that we use every year for the incoming students to help us sharpen our thoughts about the difficulties that both they and we as neuroscientists encounter in defining something like sentience. The reason that we chose sentience is because we had read that Buddhists are motivated to help all sentient beings. So our question as scientists was, well, what do you mean by sentience? And so we show students a movie that is taken in a drop of liquid under the microscope. And we ask students to look at the movie and say, are these moving objects sentient? Do you see anything sentient here? And if so, which ones? So I'm going to show the movie now. And please pay attention, everyone, and see if you see any sentient. So, I don't know, what do you think? Just based on this very slim evidence, do we see a sentient being here? Many students say that they think that the moving cell is a sentient being because they see intentionality, that is chasing the small black objects, right? So if we rerun that, they say, oh, this moving cell has intention, it has motivation, it's chasing the little black one. And then they disagree about whether the little black one has intention or not. But everyone is surprised when they find out what these are. So the moving cell is a white blood cell in your body. And its job, its purpose, is to clean up bacteria. So that's what it's doing. It's cleaning up the little black dots, which are bacteria. So as we've already heard from Professor Bitbol, it's not clear to neuroscientists whether this would count as sentience. We would say not, because it's a cell within a body. But then the monks themselves say they're not so sure if they would count this as sentient as well. So part of this discussion then is if we are translating sentience, or namshe, or sem, and consciousness, it really forces us to think about what are our constructs and what do we mean. And that has led our students to say, one student to say, science studies physical phenomena, a minute fraction of what Buddhism studies. Because of being the focus on the physical. The second grounds for exchange are the different modes of inquiry that are used in science and in Buddhism. And we will hear more about the scientific method in a little while from the philosophy of science people. But essentially, it's a process that varies by the discipline and by what is being investigated. But generally, scientists start with a question and an observation, and they try to test something about this, to get an answer to this question. So the process of this scientific inquiry is generally thought to result in answers. That's a popular view. But actually, we could see this process as critically resulting in a change in our ideas. This is easy to forget. We may think that science is about answers, but very often science is about more questions or questioning our old ideas. And so in many ways, you could think of science as a technique for changing your mind, changing your understanding. And for that, we see a major difference between science and Buddhism in that science relies on inductive logic. The reason for this has already been mentioned by Professor Bitbol in his quote from Popper. The reason for this is that scientists believe that it is always possible, whatever we know now, it is always possible to have another observation that will refute what we now believe. This uncertainty principle means that we always may have to change our minds. And inductive logic then is primary. However, in Buddhism, as we've already heard, there are different techniques that are used, and that includes, as one student said, in science, you need material things, but in Buddhism, you have your own equipment, your hand and your mind. And so for that,
Where are we on? 7 minutes.
oh, all right. And for that, Buddhists have developed a terrific tool, which is Buddhist logic, which is used, as we've already heard, to clear up thinking and find valid reasoning. Okay, and the third, the exchange between inductive and deductive logic and exploring these differences can be one level of exchange. Then the third and final level of exchange is in the arena of transmission and learning, how science transmits our knowledge and how Buddhism transmits its knowledge. And of course, each discipline, as we've already seen, has enormous literatures, bodies that we can study, that anybody can study. And we also have similar but different modes for instruction. On the left, a Buddhist mode, on the right, a large science classroom. And also we have different modes in which students are learning. So on the right, Western students using their computers, on the left, Tibetan students using their texts. But one of the things, so that looks fairly straightforward, but we were interested in a quote from one of our students who said, "Science is much, much easier than Buddhism. The teachers in Buddhism don't give you the answer, and you have to find it yourself." And this intrigued us because we in science see ourselves as also struggling to find the truth, and this suggests that we're missing something. And that's an area in which I think we can explore a lot, but there are two things that we wanted to draw to your attention today that we find intriguing, that is distinctive in the Buddhist tradition. One is the use of memorization, extensive memorization. Our students do not memorize big books, but in the Buddhist traditions, you do have extensive memorization with recitation, so that the texts that are learned are spoken aloud as part of the learning process. And we do know, I don't have time to go into details, but we do know in neuroscience that speech patterns actually affect brain activity. So that this practice of recitation also may embed knowledge in distinctive ways. Because we know, for example, that on the left you see brain activation patterns. When you are in blue, your foot is moving, so you see the blue in the middle. On the right, you see in blue the brain activation patterns when you are only using leg or hearing leg-related words. So brain is activated when and simulates what we hear or say. So these are really dynamic, powerful ways in which the brain can be trained that we think are interesting. And furthermore, the second important practice is the use of debate, so that the texts that have been memorized, many texts, are then deployed using Buddhist logic in engaging with the material in a very dynamic way. We think this can be a very powerful form of learning that deserves as much attention and research as is currently given to meditation. So to conclude, we see, as many people have said, we see many potential benefits of exchange, but now through the Emory Tibet Science Initiative, we have experienced some of the tangible examples of the benefits of those exchanges, which is we see a way to reframe science and ask different new kinds of questions on the scientific side. Perhaps on Buddhist side, you see new ways to ask questions, new modes of inquiry. What might it be possible to use inductive logic sometimes strategically? And so for both sides, we see And so for both sides, we see tremendous grounds for learning and understanding. And that's it. Thank you.
Yes, that's it. Thank you, Dr. Wortman. And now, Your Holiness, we have two respondents. Geshe Laktola representing the Buddhist monastic tradition, Tundu Sampela, although a former monk, but here he is representing the scientist as he has graduated with science and teaches physics in our program today. They will give brief response to the presentation this morning, and then we will open the floor for further discussions. Could you pass the mic, please?
Hello. Today. I'll try to just give a brief observation by simply stating that when we engage into this kind of dialogue, we need to always remember that there is an external world in which we live. So on the one hand, we have the sentient beings or living beings. On the other hand, we have the external world in which we live. And the point of this discussion is to find out how we live harmoniously between the external world and the internal sentient beings. Because the external world is like your house. So it's very important to repaint it, repair it, and take care of it. But if you simply keep on repairing the house, whitewashing the house, but forget about the person living in the house, then it's a great disaster. So it's even more important to take care of the health and the perspective of the person who lives in that house. Now, when we talk about getting the long-lasting peace and happiness of that person living in the house, we need to realize that the person cannot get long-lasting happiness and peace in isolation. He has to again have that harmony with his neighbors, with his fellow human beings. So, as we have chose this topic, Bridging Buddhism and Science, the purpose of Bridging Buddhism and Science is not simply to share knowledge towards each other, but to find out the reality as it is. Sometimes we use the word law of nature. Through this dialogue, we should be able to present the law of nature in such a way that if we don't learn to live harmoniously with each other, we are going not only to commit individual suicide, but it's very likely we are going to commit a global suicide. So therefore, I personally feel that this kind of dialogue is not only important, but it's quite urgent. And that is why these initiatives like the monastic studying science or having exchanges with the science scholars, and similarly talking about secular ethics and so forth, is aimed towards how to reach towards the whole humanity so that we are able to stop this insanity among human beings based on, as you said, existential ignorance. In Buddhism, we call it fundamental ignorance. It is out of this short-sightedness, fundamental ignorance, that we always treat each other as separate, disconnected, disparate, and because of this, we keep on fighting over small things like religion, which country you belong to, which religion you belong to, and so forth. So therefore, the great purpose of this kind of dialogue is to really find out objectively, scientifically, through common sense, common experience, and evidence-based, to present before the people, they look, if you don't live in this way, it's going to harm your health. It's going to destroy your country. It's going to destroy your family. So I think the purpose is not only simply to engage in dialogue, because this kind of dialogue in one way or the other has been taking place for so many centuries. But the purpose is to really now make it vivid, that if you don't learn to live together, you are going to destroy yourself, whether it's your country, your individual, and so forth. So therefore, my only observation is to really to say that we not only should engage in dialogue, but we should present the findings of this dialogue, the object truth, in such a way so that people are really able to change their perspective, change their thinking, And it is clearly mentioned in Buddhism that unless you change your way of looking things, unless you change your mental outlook, unless you change your mental perspective, it is impossible to get the long-lasting peace and happiness. So much of what we are trying to achieve is dependent upon our human mental outlook, mental perspective, and that perspective must be based on objective truth, objective reality, so that we should try to, as you use the word interplay, by talking about this interconnectedness, interplay, we should present our findings in such a way so that people are able to awake. In Buddhism, we use the word mindfulness, or being alert or being awake. So this awakeness, it's important to make people awake from that deep sleep in ignorance, that unless we take drastic steps in accordance with the law of nature and learn harmoniously, we are not going to get the long-lasting peace and happiness that we talk about. So it is for our own individual peace and happiness that we are doing this. It's important that we see this interconnectedness. It is important that we continue this, friendship or sharing of compassion, love, and so forth. So therefore, that kind of highlighting the point that we achieve, I think is very, very important.
Thank you. Thank you, Geshe-la. And now, Sunday Santala.
My prostration to you, His Holiness. Although Geshe-la Sangla described me as a partner of science or representative of science, I'm not sure what I'm going to say, or my remark would reflect exactly the position of science. After listening to Dr. Bitball's presentation, I couldn't help but remember a remark made by Professor David Finkelstein, who had been a part of Mind and Life conferences and also had participated in many of the science workshops. Dr. Finkelstein says that whenever science makes a huge advancement, it is through gaining a profound understanding of relativity and through overcoming absolutes, some of the absolutes that are prevalent in science. For example, when Einstein's theory of motion replaces Newton's theory of motion, it was by relativizing the concept of space and time. In Newton's worldview, space and time are absolutes. However, Einstein sort of relativized that and was able to come up with a new theory and a more profound way of understanding the world. So because of this precedence, it seems that science can learn something from Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, because in Buddhism, we have a very profound sort of understanding of the idea of relativity, or it's also known as the concept of dependent origination. Now, Buddhist concept of relativity is applicable to all phenomena, whether it's physical, mental, or metaphysical. So, by extending, the idea of relativism, the idea of dependent origination, to include, other aspects such as, concepts that are still considered as absolute in science. For instance, the speed of light and so on. These are still considered as absolutes. So by relativizing and using the concept of dependent origination and concept of relativity, I think science can find a new sort of understanding, a new foundation upon which these ideas could be erected. So this kind of dialogue, this kind of meeting of mind has huge potential in benefiting not only the Buddhist world, but also the scientific world.
Thank you, Sundala. As we open the floor for discussions. Your Holiness, do you have some questions or comment to the two presenters and of this morning? Also, please, since in this presentation we have heard the limitation, one of the themes, the recurring themes, was the limitation of science, and perhaps encounter with the Buddhist science may bring the concepts such as the dependent origination, but also the subjectivity, the inner understanding what the first person kind of approaches to understanding the world and the realities. So please feel free to point out the points where you see your own work and the research and understanding may point to certain convergence or the certain complementary the elements from these two spheres of modern science and Buddhist science.
Professor Bitbull ended his remarks with a very provocative statement of, don't pay attention to what the scientists say, pay attention to what they do.
It's not me, it's Einstein.
yeah. And I wanted to put that in juxtaposition with something that Carol said toward the end of her presentation about the way that science closes the loop on observation. When we develop theories from observations, our theories go back and help, and in their light, we reconceptualize what we knew before. We see how it's challenged. So I think one of the ways I would temper the idea that don't pay attention to what scientists say, we need to pay attention to the way in which scientific results challenge our older ideas. And this has been true all through Western science. You can only think of the way that Freudian psychology gave us a whole new language for talking about ourselves. Even though this is not part of psychology today, we still use the language of the unconscious, and that idea is crucial in contemporary psychology. So one of the really interesting challenges of the meeting of Buddhist epistemology, Buddhist science, and Western science is the way that the concepts are going to change, presumably on both sides. And so I think that's an interesting result of both sets of remarks today.
Thank you. Anyone else has any?
I'll just make a comment out of.
Okay. It is very true. I think many sort of things, phenomena, I think we Buddhists also need further investigation. And scientists also. Now, for example, the demarcation, sentient or non-sentient. I think in this country, the Jains,
according to Jainism, they say that they talk about the plants having sentient and being sentient.
So in our sort of books which translated, so use the way, Jains, so they consider because of the herbs or vegetables have mind, because
so when we study logic, a part of the logic, as part of the study of logic in monastic institutions, we go through this kind of logic where we present the position of Jainism and say that according to Jainism, what they say is the trees or plants are sentient because they sleep at night. That kind of logic is presented.
But some occasion at Sanat, we have some meeting, some Jain scholars. So they have several reasons, not that as simple as you see we presented in our book. So now movement, I think purely chemical, because of chemical reaction, some movement. Then some movement with conscious. So now the demarcation between there, I think we need further investigation. And another thing, a few years ago, one monk who actually, you see, live in Australia, in one small Buddhist center there, after he passed away, somehow, when I visit there, when I reach there, that monk, I think, fifth day or sixth day. So they told me, after they passed away, clinically dead. Some local doctors also check, they say dead. But since you see, that body still remains very fresh, so therefore the doctor allowed his body, fresh body can remain. So then they told me, fourth night, the dead bodies of the hand move. I think the original position not very clear to me, but somehow the fourth night, the left hand then holding the right hand, ring finger. So I told them, oh, it is great pity. You must keep one a camera. How that movement come? From our viewpoint,
according to our text, the movement in the body happens due to the movement of what is known as energy, or wind energy. And within the wind, there are what are known as the 5 major wind energies and 5 minor wind energies. Yes. And the main wind energy that makes us the movement possible is called the all-pervading energy.
That person, you see, technically dead person. So you see, at that moment, the very, very deep consciousness, deepest consciousness. So the others of the tabchik-lung dusar.
So at the time when somebody is declared as clinically dead, this kind of energy, which is called all-pervasive energy, has already dissolved.
So that movement, theoretically, the very energy which moving body already disappear. That mental state, only mental state, not sort of physical kasota, but the grosser level of consciousness which moving these things. So we also find it difficult to explain. So we need, you see, I think with full cooperation, collaboration, you see, scientists or biology, and we, I think, as I mentioned before, after death, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, body remain fresh. So that also one phenomena. So in Buddhist view, there is some sort of sort of explanation there. The scientifically now need some explanation. So we already sort of carrying some sort of project to investigation that. So similarly, the demarcation between sentient and non-sentient, I think we need more cooperation. So in any way, I think this kind of sort of further sort of research, these things, I think really mutual benefit. I feel like that. 아니, 나도 너무 중요해 요래. 남주 양라, 탁주 명하고 거리스. 잡아치야가 남주디 양부채, 다침부채. 지금 라와로게 먹고 못채네. 직선은 시로 차와르스야게 양가 요래디, 뒤내서 가가래. 간다 남주 양부채. 이내 남서 남주 양부터네 잡아채네. 좁든디 타 아주 맞았어.
So there's a saying in Tibetan which goes that when we do analysis or investigations into things and stuff, we need to have broad-mindedness and do critical analysis with openness. And as we go through the investigation, we must not be quite, we must not easily come to conclusions.
As I think genuine scientists, their mind, something very open. So further investigation. Not like 1979, my first visit to Moscow, then still Soviet Union. And I met some Russian, Soviet sort of scientists. Then I mentioned, he said there are different sort of consciousness, sensorial 5 consciousness, and the 6th mind. Then the scientists immediately reject, that is religious talk. So that kind of scientist also is a little bit fixed. Exactly. Yeah. So we Buddhists also, I think, many years ago, when the rocket reached moon, already some pictures, some rocks, rocky sort of land, some pictures show. Then I show, you see, one of that picture to one Tibetan monk scholar. Now, this is moon. He still say, oh, that might be part of Mount Meru, not moon. Thank you. So wonderful, all the presentation. Really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Only complaint is our machine not work properly. Thank you.
Please.
Did you have it? Are we done?
Yes.
I was just going to open the box a little and say that one of the things I've appreciated about these dialogues is that on foundational questions like sentience or what is life, scientists are busy doing what they do. Biologists have plenty to do. They don't tend to dwell on those issues. But in my field, in astronomy, I suspect within a decade we will find life beyond the Earth. There are 3 ways it could happen. It's going to happen in our lifetimes, all of our lifetimes, soon. And that's going to put right back in front of us the issue of what is the status, the moral, epistemological, biological status of creatures on another planet, even if they're microbes, which is the most likely case. So I think we should not avoid these foundational questions that we avoid just because we're all busy doing our research in our specialty and we think we've moved on. And this is a good excuse, not an excuse, but it's a great forum for doing that because we come at it from different perspectives and we sort of illuminate things that we sort of stopped looking at or asking questions about decades ago.
Yeah. Can I add something?
Yes, it is very true. I think as far as Buddhism is concerned, the limitless, or say the galaxies, 남규디 관계를 놓은 게 제만이 점리 송도가 점리 서울은 내지직된 타협지.
In our scriptures, there's mention of the innumerable numbers of the world systems, which are actually the scriptures mention as numerous as the sand, the grains of sand in the Ganges River.
I'm wondering, according to scientific sort of, or say the view, evolution is originally just a small particle, then some sort of sea animal, or like micro, jellyfish, like that. So what is the sort of demarcation? Up to which sort of stage? Then the feeling of pains and pleasure develop. Now that small sort of the germs of bush so it is difficult whether there is consciousness or not. It's difficult. So that already I mentioned. So number one, through evolution, when the small particle combine, then you see shape change, the very nature, I think very atomic level, I think more or less same. Then combine these, then some sort of different
different features.
Different features, you see, come. Then what level? Now, I think chemical solvent. I think what's it? The tube baby somewhere. Test tube baby.
Yes.
So now, without using semen or these things, but simply some chemical, eventually can sort of become basis of mind or not. So the original evolution that way. At the beginning of Big Bang, I don't think any sort of sentient being, or formless sentient being, maybe they are from Buddhist viewpoint, but sentient being with this body, not yet there. So we have to sort of accept evolution. Evolution means evolution theory, Darwin's theory. So what level? That because I also see some question.
Please.
When I discuss some scientists, mainly medical scientists, they semen from father, egg from mother. You see, both something any defect. Then the womb kasati, mother also you see perfect. Then can you say 100% if these sort of conditions there, then life definitely will take or not? Then some scientists say not very sure, not 100%.
Yes.
Then we have to find third factor.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So as far as sort of material level, everything perfect, okay. There must because of the life must take place because all are the perfect. In case this is still not sure, not 100% sure, then that means another factor that those sort of according ancient sort of Indian theory, Jain theory, and Buddhist theory, the consciousness, subtle consciousness. And of course, karmic link also there. So subtle consciousness, as soon as subtle consciousness enter, then life start. So therefore, I'm wondering, the evolution theory,
which state all those sort of atoms sort of combine, then some different sort of features are there, different feature, then what level the feature can be or can be basis of consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we need, I think, further research work.
Exactly.
And with cooperation.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Buddhist science,
Yes.
Buddhist scientists and modern scientists further investigate.
Yeah.
Truth.
Thomas mean what I'm trying to 상배 그 상내 사진에 많이 용을 지지사로 애는 새 라볼 때 엄마 살 이제 예 이게 이게 상관들 에이메 맞아 evolution Darwin theory 디 이지차도 이내다 성장 담을 예배된 거죠 통퇴하도가 즉 속차라 예배지 폐지시토리 또 진짜 인도산에 즉 왜서 할래 채사람들 럽럽 투그리디 상관들이 에이메 세상 다른 테오리디에 예배체 양 말한저 흉내지 지금 다가도 아주 미숙제 많이 받는데 마 지금 채돼 버렸지 예 저거체 지금은 거대로 잡면로 수스네 도스 퍼스네 도스로 Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness. And we just are getting started with this first, for this conference, and this session set the larger context. And in the following sessions, we will be more specific about the specific disciplines in the science. So now we will take the lunch break, and the afternoon session will begin at 1 o'clock.